So GB News has been a very recent addition to the roster of not news channels, because they're a current affairs entertainment channel, or at least that's what they tell Ofcom, despite them calling themselves news, presenting news, having current events being broadcast as news with news reporters and news journalists. Not a news channel though, current affairs entertainment programme, we'll call it. Anyway, they're in a bit of financial trouble. They've been making losses, larger losses year upon year upon year, when they'd projected to break even by year 3. And things aren't looking good for them. Things aren't looking good for them. Not least are they not looking good for them because one of the kind of progenitors of GB News, Andrew Neil, actually left the channel only a couple of years into its broadcasting period because he didn't actually like the beast that he'd created. Turns out a UK-based Fox News isn't something that serious journalists would want to put their names to. Now, he's been in Parliament discussing GB News, its tribulations with Ofcom, its issues financially, and the kind of rhetoric and information and style of programming that it puts out. And he's not been particularly positive about it. Let's have a listen.
What I didn't want it to become, I could see it was happening, which is why I left almost immediately, was an outlet for bizarre conspiracy theories or anti-vaxxers, or basically the nutty end of politics. That's
Fox
not
News.
Which Fox News is, I say, very good in quotes at. And in America, there's a bigger market for that. There's no market in Britain beyond a hardcore of nutters. Am I allowed to say nutters? I just said nutters.
So is the outlook for GB?
I mean, literally, he is calling the kind of people who watch GB News now nutters. Andrew Neil of The Spectator and The Telegraph. Andrew Neil is saying that GB News is for nutters. And when Andrew Neil is saying that, you know you done fucked up. You know you screwed up. When the man who works for The Spectator, who prints such stories as in praise of the Wehrmacht, and he thinks your channel only appeals to nutters, you know things are bad.
News, as far as you're concerned, fairly gloomy. Not just because because they got the model wrong.
I need to be careful what I say here because I'm quite surprised that GB News has survived as long as it is. And I'm even more surprised that it sold off Talk TV. I actually thought Talk TV might do real damage to GB News because it did have better production values. And it wasn't so conspiracy theory. It had a variety. Yeah, I think it did kind of lean to the right, but it had a variety of opinions, and they weren't.
I mean, it doesn't have a variety of opinions. Every single person on Talk TV who hosts their programming has identical viewpoints. The only real person who thinks outside the box is the fact that Christo Foufas opposes Brexit. But he's still a landlord who's incredibly right-wing on every other issue. There's probably more diversity of opinion on GB News than there is on Talk TV. Although it is funny that he talks saying that Talk TV has better production values and is slightly more mainstream in its coverage, and that's literally true. That's how crazy GB News is. I mean, the fact that GB News still has Neil Oliver on, who is quite frankly a conspiracy theorist nutcase, is quite a testament to the fact that even Talk TV, Murdoch hack nonsense outlet fronted by Concrete Mike, Julia Hate Spewer, and all of the rest of them, is somehow seen in Andrew Neil's eyes as being more legitimate than GB News. Really does say something, doesn't it?
All to the right. I think GB News has found, to my surprise, it's found a niche for itself. It's not a very big niche, and it's not a niche that can ever be profitable. Now it is lost in, it started running in January of 2021, launched in June of 21. We're now coming up to June 24, so 3.5 years. It has lost over £90 million. And it lost more in year 2 than it lost in year 1, whereas the original business model was to break even by year 3, I think.
What's interesting as well is that I don't think it's a business model that has enough legs in terms of the programming they want to do to become this large-scale public affairs entertainment channel. It would need to have broad appeal and broad reach on the terrestrial programming that it pays for, as well as online, and to be able to get paid subscribers. I mean, they're literally having the begging bowl out to have, crowd-funded memberships like they're an independent channel when they just aren't. And that's not going to actually pay the bills like it would if they were a proper channel. It's not surprising they're making this gigantic loss, when really it's just bankrolled really heavily by Legatum, by Paul Marshall, because it's an ideological loss leader for these people. They don't want it to necessarily to be profitable. They want to invest all of their own money to get the clips that go viral on social media of right-wingers saying things that they think is common sense to try and manufacture consent with. It's there to create viral moments for the internet. It's not there to rival Sky News as much as Tom Harwood deludes himself into thinking that it could be. He keeps saying, oh, we outdid Sky News on this thing. And I'm like, no one's watching you for real news content, Tom. Stop deluding yourself. Literally, Tom Harwood's sitting there with some disingenuous, paid-for propagandist hack from the Institute of Economic Affairs who's decided now that she wants a career as a newsreader and tries to think that it has broad appeal and could rival the BBC and Sky News. He lives in a dreamland. He lives in a gigantic dreamland. But of course, that's not what Paul Marshall and Legatum want it to be.
Pretty safe in saying that won't happen. So if there's a bunch of people who want to carry on financing it because they like the ideology, well, that's up to them. But I find it very hard to see how it could ever be profitable or even break even.
It's true. I mean, literally nothing he's saying is wrong there at all in the slightest. He also went on in a second half of this to discuss very specifically the ongoing issue between GAB News and Ofcom. Let's have a listen.
It may be because Ofcom knows that the rest of the broadcast universe is on the centre-left, bit more left band, and so it gave GB News a bit more leeway to try and settle down. I am surprised that any regulator would allow
the incredibly centre-left Global Media or Comcast or Rupert Murdoch or the Barclay brothers, like our media, super left-wing, funded by these super global mega corporations, that's very left-wing. Liberal maybe, right? You might be able to argue they have a liberal bias, but left-wing, certainly not.
Politicians sitting in the House of Parliament to present TV programmes, political TV programmes. I mean, if I had stayed as chairman, it would never have happened because I would not have had any politician present a television show in the first place. And I would certainly never have allowed politicians to interview other politicians from the same party. I mean, I just find that incredible. And I think on these areas, Ofcom needs to find a backbone and quick.
He's 100% right there. Again, Andrew Neil is not a moron. He may be an awful human being. He may be an absolutely terrible person, but he's not stupid. He knows what broadcasting regulation should look like. He at least has some kind of iota of an understanding about what bias looks like, about what undue prominence is, about what proper regulation of this industry should look like. And Ofcom is not engaging in it at the moment. It's very clear, both to him and us, that GB News is not following the rules, at least in the spirit of the rules. It's not acting like a proper broadcaster should be, especially one that, as Tom Harwood, as we've previously said, deludes himself into thinking could challenge the BBC and Sky News. When, again, it's literally just a current affairs entertainment programme. That's why they have loads of debates. That's why it's all just people having their soliloquies about the bad things from their political perspective, rather than kind of dispassionate rundowns of the events of the day. Because that's not what it's for. And of course it won't be properly presenting the news accordance with the rules if it has politicians interviewing other politicians from the same party. That's for Good Morning Britain, apparently. But anyway, interesting thoughts there from Andrew Neil. Essentially, when you're too right-wing for Andrew Neil, you know something's wrong. And as we've seen clearly there, he has lots of bad words to say. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.